The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Welcome to another episode of In Conversation with Alethia. I'm your host, Alethia O'Hara Stevenson. On each episode, I sit down with amazing community leaders who are inspiring, they provide education, and they provide tools that will empower you. On this episode, I am honored to have the incredible Councillor Lindsay Wegener from the town of Shelburne. Not only is she a councillor, she's also a mom, a busy mom. She's an avid volunteer in our Shelburne and Dufferin area community. Above and beyond that, she's a scholar. She was on the Dean's List at Sheridan College. Absolutely amazing. And then on top of that, she moved to Shelburne and started her own business, Spa Perfect Grooming. And the most inspiring of all, in addition to her being an entrepreneur, she ran for councillor, municipal council in 2018 and was successful, and again this term. Incredible story, and I can't wait to dive in. Welcome to In Conversation with Alethia, Councillor Wegener.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited and a little nervous.
Oh, don't be nervous. This is a conversation between two friends, so we're off to a good start, no worries. So I talked about your incredible bio, and I want to jump right into your entrepreneurial journey. Mm-hmm. What inspired you to branch out and be your own independent businesswoman?
So it's actually pretty simple, to be honest. It's a lot of what other moms sort of experience when they're young and looking to potentially start a family. I was working full-time as a veterinary technician, so a veterinary nurse. Right. And at the time, myself and my husband, we were, sort of making the decision, we would like to start a family and have some children. And I said, okay. And then we looked at the cost of daycare. Uh-huh. And we realized, wow, that's going to be hard. So with my background with animal care and grooming for friends and family, and at the clinic that I worked at, my husband sort of suggested to me, he's like, well, why don't you start your own business? Like, why don't you start grooming? And, that way we'll have a little bit of flexibility where you can be home, work from home and do your grooming, so you can still bring in some income to supplement and help, but you can stay home with the kids. Okay. So that was kind of, I guess, the deciding factor was, we were trying to save on daycare.
Wow. That's inspiring because, again, out of a need, you were able to find a niche market for yourself to be able to start your own business. Yes. And so from your business background, you ran for politics. Mm-hmm. What lessons were you able to leverage from your business background to propel you into the world of politics? And I know you hate the word politician, but...
I know, it's true. I always tell people I don't see myself as a politician. I sort of see myself as a community member who happens to sit in a politician's seat.
I like that.
So, but no, I think that not only from a business standpoint, like, running your own business, but even what a lot of people don't understand is just running a household, right? Gives you those, or specific tools that will help you in so many other aspects of life. So for me, I think starting the business and sort of learning the ins and outs of certain things that had to be done, budget-wise, things of that nature, wants versus needs and whatnot. So I think that sort of helped me when I did decide to run and, be successful with bringing those sort of tools over into the politician world, and just having that sort of basis knowledge to say, okay, I know kind of how a budget works and what we need to do in order to, try to make as many people happy as possible, but not poor at the same time.
That's important.
So, exactly. So it's the same thing, and like I said, even just the basic of running a household. It's very much similar to that, right? You need wants versus needs, and yet, you need to make sure that you can feed your children.
Okay. I like that analogy. Now, I mentioned in the show that you've done so many things. You're an entrepreneur, the politician, avid community volunteer. As a busy mom and a wife and a politician, how do you find that balance? How do you make sure that you find time for all of those things that are important to you, especially your two amazing girls that you're raising?
Yes. So I feel sometimes I actually fail at that.
I think all parents fail at some point.
I'm like, it is definitely a balancing act, but I feel that it's almost sort of a day by day, week by week kind of situation where, some weeks, the politics side or that job or that duty takes a little bit more precedence than, the mom side or even the business owner side.
Right.
So it sometimes just comes down to not really even prioritizing, but just knowing, okay, this is what I need to do at this moment, and this is what I need to do at this moment, right? So it's kind of just, but like you said, a little bit of a balancing act. But there are moments, I feel like I do fail, But yeah, I think it's key just to have that acknowledgement that it's okay.
Yes.
Sort of to fail, right?
Yeah,
that it's
that's
okay that exactly that. It's like, okay, you know what, this week, okay, I didn't get to my daughter's hockey game because I had, X, Y, and Z that I had to do with council, or because I was just working, I was very busy with working, and that's okay, because next week is a different
You'll be
week.
there,
Yeah, exactly. So it does help as well with, scheduling. And I try to be very good with writing things down so that I know what I'm doing and what needs to be done and whatnot. So having an appointment book that I can physically see and hold in my hand sometimes really helps with that too, with just creating that helpful balance.
Oh, that's good. And, even talking about balance, you've dedicated so much time to the community, to council, to your family. How do you find Lindsay time?
Oh, yeah, that is a struggle for sure too.
Yeah.
That is definitely a challenge. So what I try and do is I schedule my day, and I block off a little bit of time that would be considered sort of lunch in the middle of my day, and that's when I do my workout.
Okay.
Because I'm an advocate for health and wellness, and I think sometimes that people think, oh, when you work out or you exercise, oh, that's great, you'll look better or whatever, but it's for your mental health too. And when we exercise, we release endorphins, and it helps. Like, I could be having a bad morning, and then I do my workout. Sometimes I don't want to put on my running shoes, but when I put on my running shoes, that means I'm doing my workout. So once I get through that workout, it feels so much better, right?
Okay.
I feel better, I'm uplifted, and I'm like, okay, see, I knew I needed that. And so that's the little bit of time that I schedule in and I devote to myself.
That's good.
Because I know I need it, right? I with everything sometimes that you're dealing with, kids and school and, the home and the budget and work and business and council, sometimes you just need a little bit of time to say, okay, this is what makes me feel good, and I need to make sure I schedule that in for myself. So I really try and make sure that, Monday through Friday, I get my 1 hour.
That's good. No, that's absolutely
to
amazing.
devote to my mental health and my physical health.
Yeah, that's good, because often as, busy, whether you're a mom or a dad, as busy individuals, that's the first thing to go, right? That's self-care. So I love the fact that you're able to make sure that you have time for yourself.
Yes.
And when you have time for yourself, you're able to better serve your community, your family.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And I mean, that's the key too, right? Because a lot of people will say, oh, well, do this or do that. And I'm like, a lot of, experts, they'll say, like, if you don't take care of you, then how can you take care of others?
That's true.
Right? If you let yourself, just go to the wayside, right? Then you won't have the energy, you won't have the strength, you won't have the willpower and the go-to to say, you know what? Okay, yeah, I'm ready to take on this task, or I'm ready to help you out, right? Because you're exhausted, right? So you have to still sort of schedule some time for you. And
put on your oxygen mask first.
Yes, exactly.
Love it.
That's a great way to think about it, right?
That's good.
That's such a great way to think about it. Is you got to put on your oxygen mask first, and then you can help others.
I love that. Now, we talked about self-care. I want to ask you some of the hard questions now. As a politician, what are some of those policies that you're most passionate about, especially when you think about the legacy that you want to leave behind for your girls?
Yes, totally. So I think one of the biggest ones, that I've kind of advocated for as well, and also helped other, counselors around the table, supported them and given my support to them as much as I could, would be, that equity, right? As we've discussed, I'm a mom of 2 young girls, and even with the strides in advancements that we're working on and we have already achieved as a society, there's still limitations and there's still barriers, especially for women. So for me, I think one of the major policies is just really trying to implement and make sure that we have legislation in place or policies in place that sort of gear towards that equity. And I'm not even just speaking just equity for women, but equity for all.
Absolutely.
It's really important. Shelburne's diversity is changing. Our demographic is changing. We have a lot more younger families coming into town. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that fact, and then we work to make sure that everyone feels welcome and that everyone is included, and everyone feels like they have a safe place.
No, that's powerful.
So I think that's kind of I would say at the top of my list, right? So we've done things as council as a whole. I never like to say it was only me or it's just me, because it's not. There's 7 of us around that table. So, there has been motions that I have tabled, that will, speak to that aspect of equity and whatnot. But without my fellow councillors supporting me, it would never get passed. Right. So, but yes, that would be, the highest point, I think, for me, and like you said, even with regards to legacy, it would be wonderful to see that that sort of is what I'm leaving behind, is that when someone speaks about me, they say, what, she was for everybody, right? Right, she was for everybody, and that's what I want.
And when you talk about she's for everybody, one of the things I love about you is when you're invited to the various community events, you show up.
Yes.
Not many councillors understand the impact, or not many individuals in general, whether they have a seat at the table, understand the impact of showing up and being present in spaces that you're invited to.
Yes.
Why is that important for you?
I think it's just, partly, it's related to your job, right? I mean, I am paid, as well to, with tax dollars, and I should be showing those, ratepayers that I value that and I appreciate that. And, secondary to that, I think it's important that if you are in a position of considered leadership, that you uphold that leadership.
I love that.
Right?
We're gonna pause on that and pick it up in the next segment. So we'll be right back with In Conversation with Alethia, and we'll talk with Councillor Lindsay Wegener on her role in the community. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Angel Morgan, host of Raising Energy on Rogers TV. Join us each week as we are back in the studio doing live psychic readings. I work with guides, guardians, angels, archangels. I'm a free-for-all. I even bring through animals and messages from loved ones to bring you closure. Check out rogerstv.com/raising energy for our listings and airtimes and for your free tickets.
Welcome back to In Conversation with Alethia. I'm in the studio with Councillor Lindsay Wegener, and we're just talking about her role in the community and why it's important for her to show up in spaces when she's invited.
Yes. So, yeah, as mentioning, I think it's important, those of us who are in a leadership role, that we, sort of exude that leadership, right? That we show that leadership and we live up to that leadership. So, I also feel like it's important that, when the community, invites you, they're inviting you for a reason.
Yes.
And I feel it's my, it's not even just my duty. It's just it's how I feel that I should just be, and that's showing the community that they're important.
Absolutely.
Right. That what they're doing, their event, their organization, whatever it may be, it's important, right, and it's valued. And it's acknowledging that fact and showing them that I acknowledge that fact and that I appreciate them and that I appreciate what they're doing in the town or in the community as a whole, and showing up, I hope, shows that, right? Shows that I value them as a member of society, whether it be an organization or just an event or a religious, anything. So it's important to be there, to show up.
I love that, and it is definitely appreciated because it goes towards building a sense of belonging for the community.
Yes.
Right? So that's amazing. Now, again, speaking of politics and some of the tough questions, what has been some of the biggest challenges you faced as a politician? And I know there are many, but maybe two.
Yeah. I think some of the challenges are honestly, policy making.
Okay, fair.
Because there are certain decisions and aspects that we all have our own personal opinions, and I have, a personal opinion about certain aspects as well. And what I can't do is only rely on my personal opinion.
Okay.
Because these policies that we make or bylaws or whatnot, they are for the entire community. They're for almost 10,000 people. Yeah. So, if I'm sitting there making policies or rules for what Lindsay Wegener wants, it's just, you can't do that, right? So, sometimes there are certain things that I'm like, well, I really feel strongly about it this way, but because I have to decide for 10,000 other people, I have to take into that consideration, right?
That's not easy.
It's not easy sometimes, because as well that you'll never be able to please everyone.
Yeah.
So, when you make that decision, you're hoping that you're making the right decision for at least the majority of people. I mean, I try and make the right decision for all people, but at the same time, I know I'm going to make someone upset.
Yes, yes.
So and dealing with that, internalizing that and coming to terms with it is sometimes a challenge. Yes. I have to sort of tell myself, even though you don't want to make anyone upset and you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or make them angry, you're going to. And, I have to be, I guess for lack of a better term, okay with that.
Yes.
Because otherwise, it'll drive me crazy.
And speaking of, upsetting people, I know one of the things that you've been subjected to is some of that hate and that nasty rhetoric, especially on Facebook, right? So there have been some really hurtful comments, towards you, not just as a woman, but as a councillor, and some of the decisions, that council has made. Yeah. How have you been able to navigate? And I'm asking this for the general public, because again, you've got young girls growing up, right, in an era of social media. How have you been able to navigate some of those hateful comments and to be able to remain true to who you are as an individual? Yeah,
I would say, at the beginning it was more challenging. I tend to, I guess because I really try to put 110% into everything I do, that I really take things personally. Yeah. So when someone goes on and they have choice words to say that aren't so positive or are even very, they can be very hurtful. I really, I would read them and I would take them on, and I would be like, man, like, I really tried and yet it wasn't good enough. Like, how come I just can't be better, or how come I just can't be good enough? So at the beginning it was really hard to internalize, a lot of what was being said. And sometimes I would, lash back, and it wouldn't be mean or hurtful or rude, but it would be defensive.
Right.
And I learned to basically take myself back and just say, okay, they're not directing it right at you. I mean, sometimes it was directed right at me, but for the most part, it's usually just they're frustrated, and they're not sure, what to do with that frustration, and so they lash out, and
Yes.
they'll say some things or whatnot. So what I've learned to kind of do is, again, because I've had to internalize and be okay with knowing that some people may not be happy with the decisions I make, or all the decisions I make, or I've had to just say, okay, it's okay. And then, so what I've learned to come back with is facts. I really try to just, because I feel like knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
So if you have the facts, then you can better understand why things are how they are. So for me, it was, initially might have been a little bit more like, hey, like, don't be so mean. But now I'm more like, okay, I understand your frustration, and I can completely empathize with it. I'm a community member too. I get frustrated sometimes over red tape and how long it'll take to get things done. So I come back with facts, and that way, the more truthful, factual information that is out there, the less likely we are to hear negativity. Absolutely. Because people then can understand, okay, I get it, this is why it is. I'm still a little angry over it, but at least I have the information so that I can process why it is what it is.
Right. And when you talk about some of the hate that has been thrown your way, it's interesting to know that female leaders, in particular politicians, have been subjected to the hate the most,
yes,
right, compared to their male counterparts. And if I look as far as the former Australian Prime Minister, even New Zealand Prime Minister,
yeah,
the amount of hate that they've been subjected to based on their womanness, not so much their politics, but their womanness, is astounding. And so
yes,
we've got a long way to go and so
yes,
much work to do. And when we talk about gender equity, that's one of the huge pillars that we need to move.
Yes, it very much is. And I don't know why. Like I'm not sure if it's just because as a woman we're supposed to be more gentle. We're supposed to, again, as I mentioned before, with our strides of moving forward and where we've come from where we were, it is much better. But there's still that little stigma, those little stereotypes, where you're a woman, you're supposed to sit
behave
there,
a certain way,
behave a certain way, sit there, be quiet, look pretty, and so I feel like sometimes, that could be part of it, right? Is why sometimes it appears, and actually, I mean, I guess it truly factually is, that women do sometimes, experience those forms of hate or forms of, just being degraded and whatnot more than their male counterparts. So, I'm hoping that, as more women sort of find their voice, and more women who are already potentially in leadership roles share their voice, it'll inspire others to do the same, and that directive will sort of change, and we'll just continue moving forward and being better. On Monday evening, for example, at Council, there was a motion put forward by myself with regards to limiting barriers for women in politics.
Okay.
So It was basically a motion of support in our communications, and so council, again, without council's approval on that and support on that, it doesn't go anywhere. So with unanimous decision, it was said that yes, we will support this, and it just basically speaks to trying to remove some of those barriers that women may face or feel that they're going to face if they run for politics.
Perfect. That's absolutely brilliant. And it's important to note that out of 7 councillors that sit at the council table in Shelburne, there's one female. One female. This is 2023.
Yes.
We have work to do.
I agree.
Now, you touched on barriers. What advice would you give to any young individual, any woman who's aspiring to be, enter politics? What advice would you have for them?
I think it's key to just, I was nervous, right? I was toying with it, and I thought, no, I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. I'm not, I didn't go to school for politics. So, how would I potentially do sitting around a table full of other people who maybe have a higher education than I do or a different background? But I think you just sometimes you have to go for it, right? A wise woman once told me about feeling comfortable being uncomfortable.
Love it.
So, I think it was that aspect, right?
Okay.
Where you just have to, if it's something that you're thinking you want to do, you want to make change, then you've got to be the voice and you've got to be the action to make change. Because as I always say, we always say, actions speak louder than words, and it's true.
Yes.
We can talk all we want, and we can say we've got these ideas and we want this, we have this vision, but if we don't stand up and do it, then it's still just words.
Yeah. And
right?
then you can't point the finger and say.
Exactly.
Wow.
So I feel like, if you're thinking about it, then just do it. Just do it.
Oh my gosh, Nike. Just do it. So we're coming towards the end of the show, and my last question for you is, as you're raising your family, 2 beautiful girls with extracurricular activities, what impact do you think your leadership will have on them and how they see mom going forward?
So, my girls play rep hockey, so they're in there and they're roughing it up. But I think, I'm hoping that, as they see me in sort of a role of a counselor, and even a business woman, running my own business, that they can take those sort of those tools that they see me doing and sort of apply it to their life. So when Abby was young, I basically said to her, there's no limitations. Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
On that note, we're going to wrap up the show. There are no limitations to what you can do. Thank you for joining us on In Conversation with Alethia. Thank you, Councillor Wegener, for sharing your knowledge, your insights with us. Tune in next time for another amazing episode of In Conversation with Alethia right here on Rogers TV, Dufferin-Caledon.
The Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, my life changed forever. During the pandemic, all of our lives changed, and many of us turned to alcohol,